Perfect.
Is there a little delay or
I
no?
mean, yeah, there's generally always a little bit of a delay between lives, and like, so I like to just, hey everybody. I mean, it's really late, but I just generally go into the group and just have my phone on zero volume and
Okay,
watch
we
our
are
TV.
live. We are
Yeah.
live now.
Okay.
Perfect. So, hello everybody. I'm super excited today because of our special guest. This is one of those that I was looking ahead. This is one of those interviews that I was really looking ahead because it's very relevant in this time, especially. So, without further ado, let's jump into it real quick. And
Yeah.
I would, Veronika, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. And I understand it's a crazy thing trying to find times. And I hope that, people can't log on now, that they'll be able to get lots of value in the replay.
Sure. If you watch the video later or the live session later, just put a hashtag replay so we know. If you have any questions, either Veronika or we will answer them later, if not during the stream. So how do we start this? I would say, Veronika, I would really like to hear your story from your own mouth because that's super interesting, and that is something that I was really curious about because I was like, okay, I have to listen to this story. Let's deep. Let's go into it.
Yeah. Well, I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years. And a few years ago, I mean, like, I thought that even like my professional life was going all right. I thought my personal life was okay too. But in the span of about 6 weeks, everything changed. And I realized that my life was built on quicksand. So in the period of 6 weeks, my partner came to me, said that they weren't in love with me. My mother moved away, retired, moved away. My best friend and her husband moved away. That whole social group that I was a part
Wow.
of was so connected to this relationship that was gone. And I turned 30 to the sound
Wow.
of crickets, all within 6 weeks.
Wow.
And I have to say, I would like to say that I probably, put my big girl pants on and I was like, okay, well, I got to figure this out. But I actually spiraled into a very deep depression, issues with anxiety, alcohol, drug addiction. Hello, people are coming on. I'm so glad
Hey,
to see
Markan.
you at this
Hi.
time. So yeah, I spiraled for a time, and it was, I've struggled a lot. And then it came to this point where I was like, okay, well, what now? Right? I can't sustain this. And the reality is if I keep going this way, I'm going to really irreversibly destroy my life. So here I'm dealing with anxiety, depression, alcohol, drug addiction. People didn't know. People didn't know because I was not a partier. You see, I was just using things to cope
Yeah.
and to feel normal and to act normal when I was really just like a mess inside. And then I realized, I was like, you know what? I don't want to die. I just don't want to live so sad. So I
Yeah.
had to make really conscious choices to rebuild my life from scratch and to establish a firmer, solid foundation. So as I did that, I was like, okay, if I figured this out, I'm going to use my knowledge to help other people, which is how I transitioned then into coaching and really this online space. It's really just sharing my story and what I did in order to myself pivot and get out of that. I know a lot of people are not necessarily in the same situation, but you could be in situations right now where it's things are not pleasant, things are not good, and you can truly say, I am not happy with the circumstances I'm in right now. What do I do now?
Mhm.
So I'll talk a little bit about how I did that myself.
Sure. Um, so when you were in this situation, what what was it, or how did it affect you other than the addiction problem? Is there something else that was going on? Did it show up in your business, or how did it show up anywhere else?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like now I don't have friends. Now I don't have, so definitely I was taking those insecurities, those problems into new relationships. And I mean, something like this will impacted my business. But really it was just me personally. I was distraught. I was in so much emotional and mental pain at that point. So that was really first and foremost what I needed to overcome, is getting to a place where I knew who I was, where I loved who I was. Because I think that's where all these problems stem from. You know, it's really difficult to show up 100% in your business, your relationships, or whatever it is, if you internally are in like turmoil.
Exactly.
Obviously, we do our best, but it's better to be able to, you know, pour from a full cup rather than any little effort, whether it's your business or relationships, ends up, you know, depleting you completely.
Sure. Makes sense. I mean, this exactly. I mean, I strongly believe in this because people say, okay, you can always differentiate between your personal life and your business life, but that's not true. This is a holistic picture that essentially that complete us, and it's we who are in the personal life. It's we who are in the business life as well. So I get where you're coming from, and this is super cool. Um, so is there a special framework that you have developed for yourself or that you have helped your clients with that helps them pivot in terms of adversity? That's the topic of the live stream today. So if you can shed some light over that, that would be really cool.
Yeah. So the number one thing that really helped me was identifying my core values. And the reason I say core values is I think that we're really accustomed to hearing that. It's like for trendy startups, core values, you know, they got the plaques on the walls and on their letterhead or in their employee manual. But we don't think about being that intentional necessarily with our own life, our own personal life. And I couldn't answer that question, what are my core values, until I, you know, got in my 30s. The thing with core values is core values helps you stay on trajectory. You're not about this or about that. And it's not even to say that this is bad or this is good. It's just that your core values is your true north. Now, with what's going on right now, oftentimes our feelings take center stage. And your feelings are volatile. I know for me, I don't know for you, I'm going to just assume there's probably a text message from a certain person or an email or something that comes through, and what would happen? Your mood changes, your feelings change, right? Like I would like to say I'm super resilient, but I know that there's probably triggers that happen that would change my mood, and my feeling would go from black to white, like completely different, right? So what we do is we make decisions based off of our feelings. But when your feelings are volatile and you make choices based on your feelings, it makes perfect sense that your life ends up being volatile as well.
Yeah.
So clearly, the purpose of feelings is not necessarily to make choices based on your feelings. But I think that we can honor them. I think that we can't actually fully honor them until we see what feelings are for. So feelings are an indication of how you perceive yourself and the world around you. They're not an indication of what's true. It could be in alignment with what's true, but also if you have self-limiting beliefs, you're going to have self-limiting feelings.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a tangent, but that's why I go back to core values, because you can look at a situation. If you ask yourself how you feel about it, you're all over the place.
Yeah.
But if you ask yourself, what choice is in alignment with my core values, then it becomes clear. I'm not saying the decision is easy, but the decision becomes clear. Right? So what I did is I've got a worksheet, and I was mentioning this before, so people are welcome to go to my website. I put, because I'm pivoting away from coaching, I put all my worksheets online, and I actually take also my branding clients through core values as well. It's important to answer. So personal, business, it doesn't matter, your core values are your core values. So I made a decision to identify what mine were, and I chose 5. So for me, it's love, integrity, gratitude, courage, and authenticity. Those are my 5. Okay, so I have a worksheet. It's a glossary of like 200, 250. Obviously, that's a lot. You're not going to do that. You're going to pick 4 or 5. And then I define them. So love is to operate from a place of kindness, compassion, and respect towards others and myself. I'm not saying that I'm perfect at that, but that's my true north. That's where I try to come to, right? So identifying your core values is really, really important. So choose your 5. You don't rush it. When I looked at the list, there was like a few that came out, like stood out perfectly. And then there's a couple that I waited and I kind of really thought about for some time. So 5 core values, define them, because you know how I might define something is different than how you may define it.
Yeah.
And that's your guiding principle. The core values defined into guiding principles, and that's your true north. Every choice you make in alignment with your core values will further reinforce a strong sense of personal identity. So the world can collapse around you, but you have a strong sense of identity. At least that's the thing that you're sure of.
Yeah.
When people make choices in conflict to their core values, that's when they get to that place of, I don't know who I am, because you're chipping away at your identity. You go from building to destroying, you see?
Yeah.
So that's why I had come to that place in my life. And I thought, you know, I'm a good person. I deserve a good life. Being a good person does not entitle you to a good life. I'm sorry to say that. The way you have a good life is you live in alignment to your core values. That's how you build your identity rather than tearing it down. And if you feel you don't have confidence, and if you feel that you don't know who you are, start asking yourself a question. Have you lived in conflict to your core values? And time again, you see promises that you've been breaking to yourself.
Is there, I mean, this is super interesting. Is there a specific way that you have developed so that you realize immediately if you are not acting in accordance with your values? And one step before that, how do you exactly come to a conclusion that, okay, these are my core values? Is there a step-by-step way or any actionable method that you can take us through?
So I went through, so again, I have that worksheet, and it's not something that you need to sit down and complete in 5 minutes.
Okay.
So for me, when I read that, there was a few that really resonated, like love. You know, I really wanted love in my life, and I wanted to be a person that I exemplified that as well. Like that stood out. When I saw love, I was like, of course love.
Okay.
And then integrity, you know, that stood out to me too. That really did. Gratitude really did, you know, especially when things are not the way that you want it. How do you stay in gratitude? Right? The last two, courage and authenticity, those actually took a while for me to identify, but I was like, I'm going to commit to 5 core values. So this is something that I think that you need to look at and identify for yourself. I really truly believe that there will be some things that stand out to you. You know, the words just jump out and you're like, this is definitely something that resonates with me. And that's the thing, is we do have a true north. So when you look at it and you're able to identify it, then, you know, you have the connect, but you have to go intentionally. Because if somebody's like, what are your core values? You're like, oh, you know, like be nice, like the golden rule. Like you kind of know, but you haven't clearly defined it. And if you haven't clearly defined it, you can't live clearly by it.
Makes sense. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm personally very curious about what's there in the worksheet, so I would definitely take it and drop it in the comment as well.
Well, and let me know how it goes. So yeah, it's a glossary of 250, and then you list 5, and then you start to 1, you define it into a guiding principle, and 2, you get honest about your relationship with it right now. It could be that you don't feel that you lived in alignment with something, or you feel like now that I'm looking at it, I could see in ways that I have and I haven't. So even just getting honest about where you are in your relationship to your core values, that clarity goes a long way in being able to start stepping into it. And I'll tell you, I printed that out, my core values. I created a thing. I printed it out. I had it on my fridge. I had it in my bathroom by my mirror. I had it on my phone. So I started putting this in front of me constantly to remind myself, because I was in so much pain. I needed the outside reminder. So it was everywhere. And I've been talking about it for 3 years.
Cool.
So
do you also believe in, let's say, enchanting affirmations of sort, or do you do something along those lines as well, or do you recommend your clients doing?
Yeah. Actually, there's a worksheet for that too. But that's the thing is, I mean, affirmations are interesting. So that is a tool. that you can utilize. But you kind of have to also go back to, that actually kind of leads into the next thing I was hoping that we could talk about, which is
Sure.
dealing with your self-limiting beliefs.
Mm,
So your affirmations are one tool, but another thing is like your environment, like who are you around? So all these
mm,
things are kind of by osmosis. You could start creating change in your life by changing your environment, by
mm,
purposely saying different things. Okay. But
sure.
it's a deep process. Just having an affirmation on your phone isn't going to necessarily impact you or create this massive change. I think it's holistically, we need to be, again, conscious of how we're operating. So
Mm,
the friends, again, do you have friends that have the same values as you? Would you say that your friends actually exemplify? Again, because that's how you create your culture in your life. So it's twofold. It's how you operate, but what you allow in. So if you really want a life that exemplifies those core values, your friends, okay, your environment, the media that you take in,
mm,
okay,
mm,
the things that you say, all these things need to be in alignment with your core values in order to create that culture. You know, it's
yeah.
like a city with walls and there's a gate.
Yeah.
So what gets in? What's a standard?
Mm. I mean, this is also very important. The way we are surrounded, or the people who we are surrounded with, or people who we surround ourselves with, they have a great impact. This makes me think: is there a specific way that, so for example, when you realize that, okay, I want to go from point A to point B, however, the people who are with me right now, and these can be my best friends for years, um, they are they're not helping the cause, so to say. Do you recommend, or how would you then make sure to still fight the urge of, let's say, putting them away, even if they are your best friends, and focusing and prioritizing your goals? Is there a specific way that you recommend here?
So when we, you know about imposter syndrome, right? So
Uh-huh.
oftentimes, when we're trying to step into this new identity that's in alignment with our core values, it could be with our friends, it could be taking a leap career-wise, it could be with a partner, it could be all these things. When you're stepping into this identity that you're not familiar with, but is aligned,
Hmm.
it could feel wrong.
Right.
You're going to have self-doubt because making choices that are in alignment and also starting to keep promises to yourself, if you are not practiced, you are, it's like a muscle, so you're going to have a lot of self-doubt. Why? Because you haven't really gotten accustomed to listening and following through with that inner voice,
Hmm.
right? So, for example, if somebody's dating and they know like what their values are now, okay, and then this person starts to really like not treat them nicely, or being neglectful, or these kinds of things, your own insecurities and everything could be like in this place of trying to grapple for love and trying to
Yeah.
grapple for acceptance, right? That's your default mode,
Yeah.
is to behave in that way. But that's not, again, let's say if your value is love and you're like, this person is not operating in a place of kindness, compassion and respect towards me, well then it feels wrong. It feels conflicted
Yeah.
to step into the identity of saying, I'm going to create space.
Hmm.
But the more that you do that, the more that you practice doing that. So at the beginning, it'll feel wrong. You'll have a lot of self doubt because you have not become practiced in stepping in that identity and listening to that voice. But over time, what's going to happen is the ability to take action that's aligned will get
Hmm.
easier and easier and easier. So I can be faced with something now that would have been super conflicting maybe 3 years ago, but it's not anymore. Not to say I'm not like, oh, well, that's unfortunate, but I don't feel conflicted about the choice and I'm able to
Hmm.
take action a lot easier. So think about it like a muscle. So we want to make all this rapid change in our life, but start with something small and
Hmm.
build your way up towards it,
Hmm.
rather than a cut and dry. Maybe don't go out as much with that friend. Maybe
Yeah.
don't text that person back for 24 hours and give yourself some space to actually really lean into that new
Hmm.
identity.
Hmm.
Um, for example, too, is like also give people the chance to go on the journey with you. I had a girlfriend of mine when I was going through this that was a big gossiper, and a lot of negative talk.
Yeah.
And she also, like, she would complain about her mom and how her mom was so negative while being also negative. And I got to this point where I was like, I don't know if I can really have this person in my life anymore, because it's
Yeah.
just she's constantly gossiping and it's negative talk, and it just really, like, it brings me down.
Brings you up.
It did, yeah,
Yes.
it did.
Yes.
And then,
Yes.
so in the most loving way I could say is, I was like, well, the next time I'm going to give her the chance. I really didn't expect anything. It's like, I'll give her the chance, but like sometimes you just get to that crossroads in a relationship.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
she's, we're having, a girls' date night, and she gets into this, rant. And
Mm.
I go to her and I'm like, you talk about your mom being like that, but you're kind of like that too. Like, do you see
Exactly.
that you're kind of like you're creating the same sort of like atmosphere, and like you're doing the same thing she does? Like, remember when
Yeah.
you're talking about that person? You're talking about how she's like so mean, gossiping about other people. Remember when you were doing that about like, your friend's girlfriend who got engaged?
Yeah.
Like, and she stopped and she goes, "You're so right.
Yeah.
You're so right."
Yeah.
And honestly, she has been I've seen her change, you
Sure.
know? I've
Sure.
seen her change, and she's been the person who's been like giving me positive self-talk at times. And I was really surprised by that, because I lost a lot of friends and I did have to create distance. But I gave that friend a chance and said, "Hey, like, this is like, it's really hard to like listen to this sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm here for you if you want to rant, but it kind of seems like it's a thing for you."
Yeah.
Um, and that changed. So I gave her the chance, and she did change. So not everybody will, but if
Yeah.
you really do care about somebody, give them the opportunity. Not to say
Absolutely.
that it's going to work out, but it was a pleasant surprise, and she's still a dear friend right now, and she's the person that I can go to for encouragement, which is like, it's just wonderful. So yeah,
Yeah.
good things can happen when you even just yourself align, and you see if other people can as well.
Yeah. It's so true. What you said resonates with me really, especially because I told you I'm right now in India, and um, even I had a rough past. So before before going to Germany, I was caught up in the world of gambling, where I literally lost everything. I had to borrow a bunch of money from my parents, from my family, from my friends. Uh, I lost all my savings, and I was in a really bad position or situation that time. That was my rock bottom, by the way. So I knew that being in the same situation or being in India was not an option. I was very unhappy with my job, and things were just so
Mm-hmm.
bad. So I said, okay, if I have to make something out of myself, being in India is not an option. So I decided to go to Germany. I did my MBA and got hired by one of the best automobile companies in the world, and then started my business. Rest is history. But um, what happens every now and then, whenever I come here, I see that the people who I was hanging out with that time, they are the same people. And every time when I came here, sure, I met them because they were friends that time. However, when I tried to tell them, okay, you are in the same situation that you were 5, 6, 7 years ago. Why don't you think about some things? Give them some tools, give them some opportunities, give them some work opportunities, but they just downward spiral into the same situation. And I like, especially last year onwards, I said, I don't want this shit anymore in my life. I'm like done, because why would I why would I let someone else suck my energy, just the way you said? And
Mm-hmm.
I just moved on. And I mean, here's how I personally look at it. The people who just um, didn't resonate with me, they were just not meant to be. But the people who stuck with me, which are 3 to 4 friends of mine who are very near and dear to me, they are there because they have seen my ups and downs. I've seen their ups and downs, and we have supported each other, and we just send positive vibes to each other, which is what you want in your life. If you want to go and do something and make an impact, achieve a goal that you have dreamt of. So I completely get what you're trying to say. It's perfect.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is, I mean, you can love somebody from afar. You don't need to be like mean about it. I think that over time you can create distance, and sometimes people are offended. Um, But look, everybody's got their own stuff going on. You're not the center of somebody's universe, even if you created a little bit of, um, hurt
Yeah.
or offense there. They're gonna be fine.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, if it starts affecting you, then you have to really take a stand and have some boundaries. Because
Yeah.
for me personally, what happened is the same pattern started repeating. Hey, can you give me some money? Can you lend me some money? And I didn't want to help them anymore because it seems that they were not taking responsibility of their life. So why should I take responsibility on their behalf of something that I'm not responsible for? So
Yeah.
I just moved on.
Let's be honest too. I mean, what we teach kids is like there's consequences to your actions. That's what we teach kids, right? You can't just do that. You can't be mean to this person. You can't, push somebody on the playground because nobody's going to be friends with you, right? And as adults, for some reason, what we often try to do is we try to save people from consequences, but those are the lessons. It's not that you're trying to teach somebody a lesson. It's just letting the process work itself out, right? You can't keep saving people from the consequences of their actions. And the consequences of their actions may very well be if they have a gambling problem and they keep trying to borrow money from friends, that eventually they come to a place where nobody will lend them anything and they have to really face the consequences of their actions. And that is love. That is not hate. That is a loving action to allow the process to work itself out, because otherwise you're enabling somebody. And that's not loving.
Yeah. I mean, I've already talked about this also inside the group, but one of my best friends that time, who was really close to me, I came to know this time, especially in this trip, a couple of months ago, that um, he had lost his house, he had lost his wife, left him. He lost everything. He's like, he had his own restaurant, which was running very well. He had to sell that off. He lost everything. And what happened is, uh, of course, he had to borrow a bunch of money from people who were not so good people, quote unquote. So he went through that stress. And what happened a couple of months ago is he got the nerve in his brain. It just popped.
An aneurysm.
Yeah, and he just collapsed. And he had to go through surgery and stuff like that. Again, he didn't have any money, nor did his family has any money to pay for him. So some other friends helped him, and it's like I was like, oh my god, this is just so crazy. It's just so crazy. And
right.
And what you said makes, I mean, at that point I had such a strong feeling that I saw him lying on the bed in the ICU, and I was like, okay, this could have been me had I been here. I don't know, probably, I don't know. And that kind of, I mean, I just started crying because I was so thankful for life and for the experiences that I've had. And I saw the journey that I saw my own journey, and it just flashed in front of me, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so grateful. I'm just full of gratitude.
It's small intentional steps, right? That took you away from that. And then some big steps too, right? And it is incredible where you can be within 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, a few years. How
absolutely.
those small little changes and some of those big leaps too. And we talk about our rock bottoms. I had mine, you had yours. And the way we're built as people, this is another tangent, but we don't, as adults, really tend to feel a need to change unless we've hit that threshold of pain. Pain or discomfort. From an evolutionary standpoint, it doesn't make sense to take a leap, even if you're kind of uncomfortable, but to take a leap into the unknown or unfamiliar until we've hit that threshold. So, and everybody's is different. You see, some people, they keep going, and you can't make that choice for them. Also, we can't spare them from the rock bottom moment, because just from a psychological level, they need to hit that in order to really have rapid change. Then you change you can actually change really quickly once you've made that choice, but you kind of have to get to that gun to the head scenario that makes is the initiator.
Yeah, I mean, the gun to the head scenario, if you really take it to heart, it never fails, and there is no way that you cannot succeed. Really, that's because what happens also when I have some coaching clients, or whenever I even talk to my family members, or whoever it is, they think about the 10th step when they have not even taken the first step. So small steps, taking consistent small steps is something that is very valuable to get results and to achieve the success that you have dreamt of. That's very crucial.
And you know what? So that intentional action, sometimes it is intimidating to take that big step, but
Yeah,
even a little pivot at the beginning makes a huge difference, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like when you're uh, aiming for a target, a little change here makes a huge difference over there, right?
mm, mm,
So we don't see the impact because it seems like such a tiny thing. Like, for example, I should be eating healthier. And we're like,
yeah,
oh, we're going to start. I hate start dates. I hate start dates, by the way. Hate it. Because just our brains don't work that way. We don't just change like that. So
mhm,
there should be a ramp up. If you want to learn to eat healthier, let's get your breakfast. Let's just tackle breakfast, okay? Before we
yeah,
change over your whole pantry, you don't even know recipes, and now you've cooked a whole bunch of things that you hate and you're
yeah,
hungry. Okay?
mm,
Just change
yeah,
your breakfast routine for
mm,
7, 14, 21, 30 days.
yeah,
Just do breakfast. Then add your lunch, healthy
yeah,
lunch. And you got
mm,
breakfast and lunch, breakfast and lunch. Then
mm,
dinner,
yeah,
okay? And in 3 months, you can actually have a habit that's so firm and established, and it wasn't this painful brute force process. You can do those, but generally, again, we need to get to those gun to the head scenarios, and those are like, you know, not eating healthy and then going to the doctor and him saying you're going to be on diabetes medication in 3 to 6 months. Just letting you
mm,
know.
mm,
That's a gun to the head scenario. Your
yeah,
partner saying, I'm done. I've been complaining. I've been saying we need to go to therapy, but you're not listening to me. I'm done. Like, that's a gun to the head scenario. Like, either it changes now or I'm out. That's a
yeah,
gun to the head scenario, right? And that's oftentimes
right,
where we get. But if
yeah,
we can get to a place where we look at our decisions and we say, what is this?
mm,
We know the compound effect for money, right?
yeah,
And investments. What about
yeah,
the compound effect for your decisions? The reality is you're going to pay that.
yeah,
Whatever your habit is now, take
yeah,
that, compound it over time, and tell me what your future looks like, because it is your future. If
hmm,
you're 25 and you're eating unhealthy, by the time you're 50, you could have a heart attack and live the last 10 to 15 years of your life sick.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
just the reality. That's going to happen. That can create that urgency and that fear
mm,
response. We can utilize that to pivot and change, but it's not something that you necessarily want to rely on long term. You have to get a little bit, it's hard to sustain that, but you could utilize fear for a moment to
yeah,
make rapid change.
yeah, absolutely. Um, you mentioned there is a third step to the framework that you wanted to talk about as well. Do we have enough
So
time for that, or?
yeah, we do. So, okay, well, the third step is aligned action, but let's look at the thing in between.
Yeah.
Because we talked about aligned action, but the thing in between is tackling your self-limiting beliefs and the story that you're telling around something. Okay, that's
Mm,
the intermediate step. So if I tell you, I'll go over like the anatomy of a belief, how it gets established. So generally what happens is we have an event, whether it's one that we caused or something that happened like this pandemic, we have an event. Okay.
yeah.
Then what you do is you start telling yourself a story about the event. This is the framing. Now you start telling yourself that story long enough, consistently enough, it becomes an established belief.
Right.
Then from the belief, okay, once things keep happening and you keep telling yourself that story, and then it reinforces this belief, this belief. What it does is it ends up leading to aligned behavior. You see,
Mm,
and we don't want the behavior that necessarily aligns with this story,
right.
right? So we need
Mhm,
to start telling ourselves a different story, or really questioning the stories that we're telling about ourselves.
mm,
So for example, for me, I'll be honest, something that I've struggled with, I think being in an immigrant family, struggling with money, Also, we were starting fresh and everything too, is, whatever I build is going to be taken away from me time and time again within business and life and personal. These things started happening. So it created this anxiety towards abundance and towards action, because I was like, what's the point if it's all going to be taken away? That was a story I was telling myself. So that story then led to this established belief that, it doesn't matter what I do because no good will ever come of it, or anything good is temporary. And then what did that do? It led me to aligned behavior of being passive, anxious, all these kinds of things. So going back to the event, getting honest about that event, starting to question the story you're telling yourself around that event. And a good way that we could do that is to start asking empowering questions. So this event, and that's the thing too, is you got event, story, belief, behavior. The last thing you want to do is that behavior to line up with and cause another event. You see, then we come in this cyclical. So we need to change it from here. And you can't change the event while it's happened, but you can at this point where it's a story. So start asking yourself empowering questions. The way our brain works, when we ask a question, we start looking for answers. So asking yourself something like, is this actually true? And then if you say, yes, actually it is true, is it actually 100% true? Does everything good that I create actually disappear? Well, no, because of this and that. You got to find something. You got to find proof that you can use to start asking yourself those empowering questions and change that framework and start looking for evidence. The reticular activating system within our brain, it's within our brainstem, is that subconscious component that starts to work for us. But if what you do is you say a statement of everything I create gets taken away from me, what does your brain do? It'll start looking for evidence of that to keep reinforcing that belief based around that story. So now you've got to start questioning the self-limiting belief, and 2, asking different questions. So one of my favorite prayers, and I'm not religious. I grew up religious, but I would say I'm spiritual, but not religious, is, what are creative solutions to this problem when I get faced with something? That's one of my favorite ones. It's from Gabby Bernstein, The Universe Has Your Back. Great book. What are creative solutions to this problem? Because what does your brain start to do? Now your brain starts to look for creative solutions. Oh, I've got this thing I can sell. Actually, I've got this thing I've been doing for free for people. What if I just put it on as an offer? So with what's happening right now and what people are dealing with, and again, it could be related to the pandemic or not, ask yourself empowering questions around a different narrative or story, or start questioning that story so you can start establishing new beliefs and taking actions that are aligned again with your core values, or really the narrative that serves you. Like, does it actually serve you? No, it doesn't. To be, self-deprecating? No, it doesn't. So here you've got your core values. Then you've got your beliefs that lead to behavior. So if we want to have behavior that aligns with our values, let's start questioning the beliefs that don't serve us or don't align with those core values. Question your answers to things, question your stories, and then start asking empowering questions that will help your subconscious and your brain start looking for that. And you could even do that again. That's where your affirmations come in. It's like, now that I know what the self-limiting belief is, if I then pair it with an affirmation that's telling a different story, telling a different narrative, whenever I think of this, now I'll think of this. So these are the tools to help you make the transition. And then the last step would be aligned action. And that aligned action will now lead to a different event, right? And this is an event that may have not come had you stayed with that story and that narrative, right? Because you would have acted differently. So now you have an event which is going to lead to a different story or a narrative that now establishes a new belief. Do you know what I mean? So then we start creating new evidence in alignment with the thing that we actually want.
It's super interesting. Do you have some sort of worksheet around this as well?
I actually, there's around this whole theme, I've got a lot. So there's something called the manifestation formula. And manifestation is very woo-woo for people, but I'm a very practical person. So there's
Mm-hmm.
a few steps there. If you find out what your core values are, and again, there's a worksheet for that.
Mm-hmm.
But then the manifestation formula, it's like 3 stages, okay? So identify what it is that you want, and start creating a plan or a workflow towards that,
Yeah.
right? Not the things
Yeah.
that you think, but tell me what you want. And, you know, people talk about the law of Goya, get off your ass,
Mm-hmm.
right? It sounds really fancy, but it's just, that is part of the manifestation formula. Identify
Sure.
what it is that you want,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Start
Mm-hmm.
getting things in alignment with that thing,
Yeah.
and then take aligned action. And then that, with consistency and perseverance, will manifest the thing that you want.
Yeah.
But those are the components there. So like, go through that as well.
Yeah. It's so crazy. I mean, it's so funny you're saying this because I mean, from what I've seen, these people on Instagram who talk about this stuff, and no one tells you that everything doesn't fall onto your lap all of a sudden. You need to take action. That's the most important component of this all this manifestation stuff that we are talking about, and that's not something that everyone talks about. So I'm glad you mentioned this. uh, are there any specific books that you recommend for the people who are watching it right now or later during the replay?
Specific books. I think that Gabby Bernstein's The Universe Has Your Back is a really great one. It's a little bit woo-woo.
Okay.
Let me think if there's anything in particular. Atomic Habits is a really great one too. So he talks about how it's the small changes and how we can build high performance habits and stack them.
James Clear, I believe, right?
Yeah. I knew it was James something. I forgot the last name. So Atomic Habits is a really great one. And honestly, like, that's the thing, is like, once you identify your core values, you start to see, because that's principle based. That doesn't change. So once you start basing your life off of a principle, things become super clear, and you're going to actually see in a lot of books that you read this same principle that's weaved, through. That's why these books are so great, and applicable to so many people. It's because you can see yourself in them, because you will identify what your values are. You're going to identify what your true north is. So those are 2 books, kind of one on the highly practical and one on more like the mindset aspect of things, that I think are really great. There's a lot of great books. So you're welcome between those and worksheets. I think those will bring clarity.
I'm very curious about your worksheet because I recently started reading a book. It's called The Value Factor or Values Factor, something along those lines.
Yeah, it sounds familiar.
And it's super practical as well. I mean, it has very actionable steps, and I'm not even halfway through, but from what I've read, what I've listened, it's super cool as well so far. So
and that's why you're gonna find with a lot of these books, you're gonna find common themes, because principles don't change. That's why you, even within religion, you have the same principles, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they are true, and they do transcend religion and so many different things. So you've got like the golden rule that everybody has, and they say it differently, So keep an eye out for these things that you see on repeat within different self-help books. And
for sure. I think we had an awesome session, because I'm pretty sure, I mean, whatever we talked about, if you can apply it to your life in a professional or personal way, you'll get a lot of value out of this. Is there, to round the things off, is there anything specific that you would like to tell the people who watch it right now or during the replay, what they could do personally or business wise? I would say let's shift the focus a little to the business aspect, because you're also a business person. What have you personally done during this time of let's say hardships? How have you pivoted your business?
Yeah, so I mean, I've in the last year, because I really wanted to serve and help, and I did go into coaching, and I created these worksheets, and I really do want to be able to do things like this, and give people value and meet them where they're at, and be an inspiration and hope and help. So I've been doing this, but even actually during this time, what it ended up doing for me is it really helped me take rapid action. And I was kind of like unclear myself in what it is that I wanted to do or offer. And everybody was saying coaching, coaching, coaching. And as much as I do love setting up sort of a framework, I'm kind of more of like, take this and you run with it. I'm not a hand holding type. But I really do believe that people's stories are powerful. And I really wanted to be that person to help them and empower them in telling their own story, because I think that, you know, my story, your story, you see, those are the things that connect with people. And that's why I have my podcast, the Hero Academy podcast, is showcasing people's origin and hero stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, we need the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
But I was like, how can I really help people do that? And I am a very creative person. I've had my own businesses for the last 10 years, and they were all creative based. And I was like, now I'm going to coaching. Why am I doing that? It doesn't feel right. So I pivoted into launching a visual branding agency for podcasters and for speakers. So let's take your story, let's bring it together in a cohesive manner so that you could take that and book speaking events, or create a sort of an idea around your podcast, or go on podcasts. You know what I mean? So that story is really important. And I think it needs to be weaved again with your values, and we go through values. I do this for visual branding. So I'm launching a visual branding agency for podcasters and speakers. So that's what happened for me. It actually just moved me to rapidly change my own offers, but I ended up like hitting exactly on the thing that I'm passionate about. And I use that framework. So something can be in alignment with your core values, but you're not passionate about it. So professionally, the two things that you want is, and I talked about this in the last episode of my podcast, so we won't go into detail, but people can listen if they'd like, is find what is in alignment with your values, and then what are you passionate about? Because if you're not passionate about it, somebody else will be, right? They'll have the secret sauce, both components, because purpose is felt in the how. So your core values are your why, okay? And your passion is your what. Purpose is not something that's one set thing. That's why we feel we have a sense of purpose.
Correct.
So it's dynamic. It changes. It evolves, and it's also felt in multiple different things. So you can have a sense of purpose where you're, you know, in your personal romantic life, with your friendships, you know, but purpose is felt in the how. It's in the motion.
Right.
So to feel that sense of purpose, have those two things that you're exploring: values and passion, or a curiosity. Sometimes we don't know, right? Correct. So if it's a curiosity, that's I would say the next thing, because that's when you're in your genius, and when you that's you're gonna have so much motivation to show up. I actually had to create boundaries and not be up till 4 a.m. working, because I just loved it so much. And that wasn't the case with coaching, but for empowering podcasters and speakers and creating these things that I was passionate about. So right now, that might be exactly what people need. And I go into more, in the episode, if we didn't talk about this, but I'm plugging it here. But you're welcome to do that, because it might actually jog up some thoughts.
Cool. Yeah, I will also put the link to your podcast as well, so people can follow you, download the episode. You also have a Facebook group, right?
Yeah, so for expert coaches, consultants, service providers, and that's the thing, is I think there's a lot of programs and just like, okay, putting together your offer, but I really wanted people to be educated about like webinars and LinkedIn and all these other kind of things that I think really do move the needle in your business and can help you stand out. So I wanted to create a bit of a different space with a diversity of industry experts and teachings to kind of round everything up holistically for coaches, consultants, and service providers.
Cool. Veronika, I appreciate you so much. This has been an amazing 50 minutes together. I know we went a little ahead of the time as the plan, but I hope you don't mind it, because this is going to help a lot of people, I believe, because I'm also going to put this outside in the on the YouTube channel, because that's something that I'm trying to build for myself as well. So I just want more and more people to see this and get some kind of help and actionable steps, especially in this time.
Yes, and thank you for having me. And I know it's a really, really late at night for you, so I appreciate you accommodating me as well.
For sure. Thank you so much. And that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any questions, just feel free to put it inside or put in the comments below. Veronika or me or anyone in the moderation team will comment and try to help you as much as we possibly can. Okay. Thank you so much once again, and see you soon, guys.